Welcome to the Chamber. You're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Health and Community Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Guildhall, on Thursday, the 10th of October 2024 at 4 p.m. So just commence with the roll call. So Alderman McMorris.
Here, Karen.
Alderman Montgomery.
Here.
Alderman Wilkinson.
Apologies.
Sorry?
Apologies for
Okay.
Robson.
Councillor Boggs.
Sure.
Councillor Boyd.
Here.
Councillor Clark.
Sure.
Councillor Deeney. Councillor Duffy.
Sure.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Sure.
Councillor Hutton.
Sure.
Councillor McDaid. And
Here.
Councillor online, yeah. And Councillor Tierney.
Here, Karen.
Thank you, members.
All right, and we will move on to number 3, which is the broadcasting statement. So I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use of the storage of these images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight requests to speak. And a copy of the Council privacy notice can be found on the Council website. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is our deputation for today. We are going to receive a presentation from Peter Hutchinson and Ronan Flanagan on the RAISE community engagement programme. So I will hand it over to Peter and Ronan. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us, Council, today. So my name is Peter Hutchinson. I'm an official in the Department of Education, currently with responsibility for raising aspiration, supporting learning and empowering improvement, and with policy lead responsibility for the design and delivery of the RAISE programme. And I'm joined by Ronan Flanagan, who has been recently appointed to work on the RAISE programme, specifically in Derry, Londonderry and Limavady. I'm just going to take some time to run through the presentation about what RAISE is about and what the programme intends to do and how it's come to where we are today. And then we're happy to take any questions or comments. And very much this is the starting off point in terms of the delivery and design of the RAISE programme as we move into a wider kind of community co-design process. Just by way of background, I suppose Minister Paul Given made an announcement at the start of June on the RAISE programme, and this has been possible through shared island investment funding of about €24 million to be in place over the next 2 to 3 years, with the potential for further investment if the first phase of the programme proves to be successful. And the whole intent of the programme is to go into areas of potential disadvantage or deprivation, working with young people, working with a range of partners to raise aspirations, raise outcomes, and improve and tackle educational disadvantage. So, Colette, if you want to move on to the next slide, please. Really, in terms of what we want to achieve, I suppose, about RAISE, it really is 2 things, as I mentioned. It is about raising educational outcomes and standards as a key focus on that. We do know that there are young people who face additional barriers to learning. Okay, you having some? That's okay. I'll talk through, and hopefully the slides will catch up at some stage. That's okay. It is about that kind of feeling about raising educational outcomes. It is also about aspiration and improving sort of the community value of education. At the heart of RAISE is about trying to make education everybody's business and trying to accept that schools often are having to do an awful lot more and face additional challenges, and how can we wrap around support around the child, around their families, around their communities to improve outcomes. It is firmly embedded within the corporate plan within the department, which sets out a vision of every child happy,
every child learning and succeeding. And there's an intentional point in that vision, that short vision statement, that every child happy comes first. And again, going back to re-acknowledge that for a child or a young person to be successful in education or learning, firstly, they need to be comfortable in school, happy to attend, feel safe there, and have other needs met before they can fully engage in the curriculum. And we do know that there are many young people who come into our schools with different challenges and baggages and that need to be met first. And that might be they come to school hungry, they might come to school tired, they might come to school in a difficult home life or a difficult community setting. And therefore, we need to think more about the holistic needs of the child before we think about how they engage with teaching and learning. And that's why we need a whole school, whole community approach to education, which RAISE is fundamentally about. RAISE comes on the back of the Fair Start report, which was published in 2021. It was led by Professor Noel Purdy of Stranmillis University College. And it was primarily looking at tackling educational underachievement in Northern Ireland, firstly with a focus on Protestant working class boys, but actually it went much further than that and really looked at disadvantage across a whole range of young people and cohorts. And what they said in the Fair Start report was that it was important that we ensure that all children and young people, regardless of their background, are given the best start in life, and that we place equality of opportunity at the core of everything that we do. And they came up with this concept of place-based partnerships and suggested that they should be developed as a proposal to reduce educational disadvantage. So RAISE takes these concepts of a whole community place-based approach, whereby we go beyond the school gate, working with other partners, and then we look at what does it mean for every child to be happy, learning and succeeding, and then what interventions do we need to take, and what interventions can we deliver to raise standards, raise aspirations, and ultimately improve the lives of all children and young people. At the heart of the programme, or as we've started to think about design of the programme, we have put children and young people at the centre of it, and we are doing some engagement work with different organisations to take views of children and young people about what might be the key areas of focus or interventions, and we're also engaging with parents as part of this process too. But if you look at you can sort of see the wee diagram that we've shared in terms of children and young people at the heart, and then as we build out, we recognise actually that children only spend about 14% of their time in school, and therefore we need to look at wider societal community factors to improve outcomes. Firstly, starting with their families and their carers, recognising that parents are the child's first educator, and therefore we need to ensure that they are confident to be involved in their child's learning. And then we move into school settings, early years organisations, other educational provisions to enhance the delivery of the curriculum before we think about also community partners. Quite often we know in different areas, different localities, that actually it might be a church, it might be a sports club, it might be a youth group, it might be a different organisation that actually has a key interaction with the young people, and actually they're a key partner in improving standards. RAISE, as I said, is a place-based approach, and so part of that is trying to identify localities where we place investment, and this is a challenging task to identify where we need to put our investment. At the start of the process, it was agreed that RAISE should be a regional programme, therefore there should be a presence in all local government districts across Northern Ireland, because ultimately what we want to try and do with RAISE is invest in communities, understand what works, and let that inform future policy delivery and operational delivery in the department. So therefore, it's important that we have a mix of localities, both urban, rural, and in different places across the north. As we looked at how we would do this, we looked at strategic output areas in the first instance to try and shortlist areas of deprivation, and we used a range of indicators which went beyond education indicators per se, but we did use GCSE attendance, GCSE attainment. We looked at attendance rates, and we looked at
special educational needs rates and free school meal rates. And then we looked at wider indicators in terms of income deprivation, health and disability, and also crime or antisocial behaviour. Again, recognising that intervention and investment in education has wider benefits solely beyond the education indicators. From that, we were able to shortlist a range of localities that met those criteria, and then what we did was we ranked them using GCSE achievement as the only available education kind of ranking methodology. And from that, we were able to identify core areas of need that would form localities, and then that's where investment would be targeted in the first instance. So ultimately, a couple of things from that. I suppose it's key that we state that it's a Northern Ireland-wide programme, that it's trying to identify the most disadvantaged strategic output area in each local government district, and then ranking them to try and identify where the funding would go. This forms the basis of what we describe as being a core, but also there'll be other localities in the neighbouring area that we would want to include in the discussions. And then ultimately, I suppose this all sounds very technical and very blunt almost, but we do recognise we need to be flexible in our approach, that children's lives don't operate very neatly in red lines, that people move in and out. And ultimately what the locality approach is trying to do is identify where our interest and area of greatest focus needs to be, who those young people are, what are their needs, and who are the key actors that can improve outcomes for them. But as we engage with localities, as we engage with communities, we will operate a flexible approach in terms of who can be involved, who should be involved in the discussions, what young people are benefiting, and how do we measure success in this. So really the identification of the localities at this stage is really to give a focus for conversations and a focus for potential investment, but we will be working with communities moving forward to refine approaches and refine interventions and ensuring it's a community informed approach throughout. If we look across the map in terms of Northern Ireland, we see 15 localities identified across, and I don't need to list them, but of course London Derry is seen as one of the localities in that area. Whenever we look at what RAISE might be like in terms of the reach across the whole of the programme, we sort of think there'll be about 50,000 pupils that live within the localities identified at this stage. And trying to test if we're in the right sort of areas, we see that those young people have much higher rates of free school meal eligibility. They have much higher rates of absenteeism. There's a lower level of attainment in terms of GCSE, and there are also higher proportions of young people who are either have special educational needs, either stages 1 or 2 of the process, or it's statemented, and also higher proportions of young people who are maybe children looked after, newcomer pupil, asylum-seeking pupils, and others, including Irish travellers. So those young people who quite often face additional barriers to education and maybe would be likely to not achieve to the same level as their peers. So we do think that we're in the sort of areas that we should be in. In terms of what this means in terms of the London Derry locality, the figures are again listed there, and you'll see again a much higher level rate of free school meal entitlement, again higher rate of pupils who are special educational needs, high rate of absence, and so on. And then we also, for illustrative purposes, Ronan works across the London Derry area and the Limavady area, and we've also included the figures for Limavady as well. In terms of what the London Derry locality and the mapping might look like, it's on this slide here. And again, those are the strategic output areas that have been identified. So ultimately Galvin 1 is the one that has been sort of identified as the area of greatest need. But then, as you see, we look at what other localities have been shortlisted and try and build out to create a quantum of interest and a quantum of effort, if you like. So that includes Cornhill, Craigan, Culmore, Shantallow East and West. But again, as I say, as we start this engagement and co-design process, We're very open to discussions with communities. If we go out and we talk to a community and they say, well, you've forgotten about that area there, or this doesn't make sense because that school or that estate or whatever it might be is not included, we'll have those flexible conversations. Ultimately, this gives us a focus of who the young people are that we want to support. But we are conscious about the need for flexibility in the co-design process. And again, on the next map, you'll see for illustrative purposes, the Limavady example of a smaller number of SOAs being a smaller locality across in that locality, in that area. At this stage, we've identified schools that we've had an early conversation with. So we're keen to just have this engagement with schools, with community organisations, with local representatives, and with any other organisation that would have an interest in wrapping around the child and supporting interventions in this way. So at this stage, we've identified schools that are serving those localities, with maybe some will have a higher proportion of pupils than others. This is not a guarantee of funding in any way of these schools, but this is just to start the conversation about who might want to be involved. And you'll see there a high number of schools that are obviously working with young people in the identified locality. And those are the schools, again, a smaller number of schools in the Limavady locality. In terms of what this actually all might mean and what it might actually look like, I suppose that really is down to the co-design period. So really, ultimately at this stage, we've identified localities. Those localities will have funding attached to them. Engagement will now take place with Ronan being in place and taking the lead on that. And what we want to know is, well, we want to know what are the issues that these young people are facing, what are the challenges that are facing them, what evidence-based interventions could we support and fund to both improve their aspirations, to improve their educational outcomes, and who is best placed to deliver them. Is it the school? Is it the youth club? Is it the sports club? Is it the church? Is it others? And try to deliver a model where it's a range of organisations working together with a greater collaborative impact, rather than just education doing a single project, if you like. It is all trying to work together. And in the early engagement we've had, obviously, it will again depend on what the locality says, what they need in terms of what the data says. But also we've heard from different areas about the need to address, I suppose, things like absenteeism and mental health of children and young people, in terms of how that impacts on their attendance at school and their engagement in curriculum, how it might be about trying to invest in youth work pedagogy and making sure youth work and schools can work closely together. We've heard about the need to engage better with families and family support in terms of working to try and engage with young people. And also we've talked quite extensively with other departments in terms of maybe there's a role here about how education and health in particular can work closely together on issues about special educational needs or mental health provision, because seeing the school as a hub where maybe other services could maybe be delivered. So there's opportunities here to be innovative about what might work, and at the heart of it is also what works for the young person, but really how do we do things differently and how do we draw in other partners. So again, it will really all be informed now on a sort of a co-design basis to try and identify what a local plan might look like, with an emphasis on collaboration throughout. And whenever those local plans are developed, that's when funding would be released. And what we're also keen to do is we're keen not to duplicate, we're keen not to cut across. If there's things that are working already, if there's structures in place that we can tap into, we're very keen to have those conversations in early stage. Or if there are programs that have been delivered by the council or others in the recent past that are evidence-based and show a clear impact, we'll be keen to learn from them to see how we can potentially add value and additionality to those. The local strategic plan, as I say, and is on that slide, will be developed through co-design. This is not a DE coming in and saying this is what should be done. This should be ground up in terms of community informed. And this isn't just about the statutory age of education. This has to have a lens of cradle to career in terms of what does early years work look like, how do we work with parents, and then how do we get young people positive pathways post 16 and post 18. And there the reference there is about aligning with community planning. If things have been identified before as key areas of need, again, we don't want to come in and have repeat that. If we can learn from what's already gone before, that's a key focus for us. As I say, it's about £20 million sterling for raise over, £20 million sterling for the investment from Shared Island over the 2 to 3 years. The vast majority goes to this programme in terms of the raise programme, which is about 17 million. And then there's 2 supporting programmes, one called T-Rex and one's called Blast. Again, in the discussions with the Office of the Taoiseach and our counterparts in the Republic of Ireland, these are 2 programmes that have operated in the south for a number of years, and they were keen to see how they could operate in Northern Ireland. And one is linked to teacher research exchange. So how do we disseminate best practice amongst teachers and educators about what works? And then Blast is about creative arts. So again, how can we maybe deploy external artists working with young people to ensure that they're engaged in education? So as a whole, these 3 programmes will be working in these localities. And I should say, I suppose, the key focus, the reason behind the investment from Shared Island is that that we share learning both north and south in terms of what works. The south have a programme of the DESH schools, which have operated for a number of years, which is again areas of disadvantage, and this is the south trying to invest in areas of need in the north and understanding how schools and community partners can maybe work together to inform them in policy design too. So in terms of the next steps, we are very much at an early stage, I suppose, in terms of engagement. So at this stage, we're just trying to explain the intent behind the programme. So the key message is about community-based education programmes, tackling disadvantage, and a new way of working with different partners beyond simple education structures. And as part of that, we're trying to identify who those partners might be, and we're also developing our internal processes and building a team up. And we've recruited a number of community engagement officers who will be embedded within communities and localities to corral and engage and identify structures, but again, to work alongside existing where possible. Then we are now moving into a period shortly of co-design, where we will be trying to hold events with these localities and who the key partners are to really understand what the needs are first, gather that evidence and establish what the priorities might be. And again, each locality might have different priorities and each locality might work at different paces. So what might be a good intervention in Derry, Londonderry might be something different might happen in West Belfast, something different might happen in Enniskillen. It's very much dependent on local need. And that all gets us to a point where we have a local plan which is agreed in terms of what's going to be delivered, evidence-based interventions, and then funding to be released. And I should say as well, I know with a lot of these programs, there's always difficulties around funding release and funding profiles in that, financial years, departments working off financial years, schools working off academic years, and others working off calendar years. But the positive thing about the funding from the Shared Island investment is that we do have increased flexibility in how we utilise that, including across financial years. And we do see this as a 2 to 3 year programme with a stronger funding stream, which maybe creates a bit more certainty whenever we roll out programmes too. So sorry for the amount of information, and hopefully some of it's been of value to you as we sort of set out what our intent is behind RAISE anyway. And as we say, this is a start of a process, start of a co-design process, and the team will be happy to engage with you at any point as we work through this. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. I'll open it up to the floor. Do members? Councillor Boggs.
Good Chair, and thank you very much, Peter. And I'm not sure if I have to, but I'll declare an interest as a member of the GTCNA and also a school governor within the council area. Thank you very much for the presentation, and really informative and gives you an overview of the direction of travel. I do have to say at this point, on behalf of Sinn Féin, I do have concerns around some of it, particularly in relation to, and I know we're at a very early stage, but particularly in relation to who is being targeted by the programme, because at the outset and the presentation that we got, the scheme is all about tackling underachievement, academic underachievement. But there are many schools right across the board, and that's just, I know you're interested in our own council area, but right across the board, there are schools included within the scheme at the minute that don't have issues with academic underachievement. There are grammar schools that are on there that don't have the same issues that a lot of schools that are omitted from the scheme at present do have, that this scheme could perhaps go some way in helping to improve the position that they're on at the minute. So I think I know that it covers particular areas, but and not to get parochial, but in Strabane, probably parts of Strabane are the most deprived areas right across the north, aren't on this at all. And I'm using that as an example against the wider region, not just against Derry and Strabane as a council area. I don't understand how we can develop a scheme that is going to spend 24 million over 3 years that is omitting a huge sector, or a huge number of schools, sorry, in a very socially deprived area. And the socio-economic factors and the background of where schools are at is a huge factor in comparing that against academic underachievement. And there are areas that aren't scoring very highly in terms of social deprivation that aren't included, or that are included, and then ones that are scoring very high in terms of social deprivation aren't included. So that's kind of the issue that I have at the minute, and we can ask why are we being led by an approach that looks at an area which is useful in some instances, and we do it here ourselves in councils and looking at super output areas. Is that the best approach for this scheme? And why are we not being led by data of particular areas that schools are in rather than the whole area where the school is? I hope I'm being clear on that and trying to tease that out. And I suppose it would be interesting to see out of where is picked within the current scheme that we've seen on the map, where those areas rank within deprivation right across the region. I think that would be interesting to see because, as I say, places that are omitted, such as Strabane Town and that hinterland, rural hinterland area, that's a large area that I know, unfortunately, and it's not a badge of honour, as a huge area of deprivation. And I would like to see how that compares to the areas that are picked up. So I know it's used as one of the percentages that were in the PowerPoint, but is this the start of the department, I suppose, moving away from using free school meals as a deprivation and underachievement outcome? And is that something that we're going to see in future? And it's just because I do think it is concerning somewhat in this, and I would have concerns about the direction of travel, about where the support for this programme. I'm not saying the programme isn't beneficial or useful. I'm just concerned at the minute where it's going to end up and in what areas, and whether or not they are absolutely the areas that need it most. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, and maybe come back on a couple other points if we have time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Boggs. Just before I hand it over, I also have a declaration of interest as a member of GTC NI as well. But would you like to answer the questions now, or do you want me to come back? Yeah.
Look, thank you, Councillor Boggs, for the comments. I suppose a couple of things, I'll try and address as many points as I can. I suppose, firstly, in terms of the free school meal measure, this is not an indication that measure is being removed, as it was a key indicator within the 7 initial stage that looked at the shortlisting of the methodology within that. And there are no, that is a key proxy measure for educational disadvantage, and there's no intention that this is intended to water down that or change that in any way in terms of strategic policy position. I should say, I suppose, the comment around the schools that have been identified, I suppose, at this stage is just to clarify where we are. So we identified the localities based on the 7 indicators and the ranking methodology, and really going back to what Fair Start said, looking at the locality. So this is where young people live. This is where the communities, and to improve outcomes, we need to work very intentionally in that locality with those young people, with those partners who can wrap around that support, and going beyond a simple school-based programme and trying to get wider partners involved. So the schools that we've identified so far as potentially having a role to play, and I suppose that's the key point, potentially having a role to play, are those schools that our young people in those localities are attending. So we've looked at the postcodes of the young people living in those areas, and we've identified the schools where maybe there's a quantum of young people attending to have this discussion, similar to what we have today, in terms of this is what the programme might be about. So those schools, I should say, it's not a guarantee of funding. It's not necessarily that they will be key partners in it, but it is that they've got a role to play. And I go back to the slide about the young people that are within the localities. They have a much higher rate of free school meal compared to the Northern Ireland norm. So reinforces that the young people living in the areas are the ones that we have a focus on rather than the school as a whole, which might have a small number of pupils from the locality. I take that point. But it's important that we ensure that they have a input potentially, because again, it should be everybody's business to tackle educational disadvantage, not just a certain sector or a certain school type. So I think that's an important message as well. I also take the point around with any locality based programme, there'll be challenges about who's in and who's out, and there'll always be debate around that. We've tried to set out as transparently as we can the methodology that was used. It was informed by early kind of stakeholder engagement, which said we should go broader than pure educational indicators, because I think the message of this programme should be, and I hope it is, a change in tact in the longer term, in that education is the greatest investment we can make in the future of our society, and it has a wider impact beyond GCSE attainment or post-16 pathways, but it can actually, targeted correctly, can actually address challenges in terms of health, in terms of social justice, community cohesion, economic activity and justice, and other things as well. So that's why we're trying to look at this place-based approach. So the intent, I suppose, it is a different style that we're trying to address in education here, in terms of rather than going directly to school, we go to where the young people live, we go to their communities and we work with them with a range of partners. But I take the point around there'll always be localities in and out, and this is also a challenge that we've faced in terms of making that decision early on that this should be across Northern Ireland, and therefore we have localities in each place, and that again is to ensure urban-rural split, a fair split across Northern Ireland, but also so we can test interventions in different areas as well, because this is a pilot programme to inform longer term policy, both in terms of what we do, in terms of what interventions work, but also how we do it in terms of the collaborative impact with others. So look, and the point that I tried to make as well is that whenever we get into localities, we're happy to be flexible and we're happy to talk to others about who should be in and who should be out, and we'll let communities really inform that process as well. But 24 million sometimes sounds like a lot. We're conscious that whenever we start to divide it out, it goes quite quickly. So we need to be quite targeted with it. But I would also be hopeful that this is seen as, here's investment here. Can we leverage in other funds potentially from other programs, other funders? Again, with that message that we're not working solely in a school, but we're working in a locality. And could we then deliver shared outcomes, shared programs with shared resources potentially across health, justice, social communities and others? So I tried to address the schools point, the locality selection point, and the point about free school meal. But if there's things I've missed, like happy, our email addresses are there, happy to have a conversation at any stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Peter for his presentation. I think when you hear it being rolled out and what it is you're trying to do, it sounds like a very, very interesting programme. I do have some questions around the role of the wider community. You're saying that this is co-design, and that's great, because you know it's going to take more than the schools to try and tackle this problem, and that's great. I would like to know what role you see, for example, the community and voluntary sector having in this, because the community voluntary sector, and I know you referenced youth workers whenever you were giving your presentation, but the community voluntary sector across all the A's, I'm sure, but particularly in my own, step up when the schools close. They provide homework clubs and all of that to try and support children. So when we're saying co-design, it also needs to be co-delivery, in my view, because they have a big role to play. And youth workers and community voluntary workers have a different relationship with young people than teachers. And I think that that's vital, and that's no disrespect to any teachers that may be present. But I think that's something that we need to remember. There is a different way that they can get through to young people who can try to get them engaged. And I think that's something that I would be definitely keen to hear. I also would be keen to hear how you see this being rolled out in terms of the co-production of this. Who will have an input, and how will that input be given? Will it be run, for example, through the local growth partnerships, or what way do you see that breakdown happening? I do share some of Councillor Boggs's concerns in relation to the schools that have been chosen. I think when I looked, I think it's page, I want to say 11, but if you bear with me, 13, which is the place-based map. And whilst I represent Derry and Ballyarnett particularly, I was quite alarmed to see that Strabane wasn't included either. I think Strabane is key in this for us. It hits, unfortunately, the top of many of the league tables that you are saying that you are trying to address, and I think there needs to be some explanation as to how Strabane was left out. And when you look at page 19, which is the list of schools across the Derry area of this council that is going to be considered for potential funding, and one of the measures being educational underachievement, some of the schools on that list are some of our best schools, without a doubt. I could very easily look at this and say this is brilliant, this is great, because most of the schools in my DA are included, but that doesn't mean it's right. I think you need to have a relook at that, because I would be concerned about that. Some of those schools, if you as EA went to those head teachers to tell them that they're suffering from educational underachievement, I don't think that you would get away with saying that, because they pride themselves in delivering brilliant results. They're getting them, there's no question on that, but to see them on this list confuses and concerns me, to be really honest. Some of the best across the north. I think and I know you touched on the postcode and how you selected the school and all of that. Now, I could be wrong, but on page 17, which is the breakdown of the areas, it's my belief that those wards are from the former Derry City Council area. Those wards have now changed. They have now been renamed, which means they have also a different makeup in terms of the geographical spread of them. And I think that could be a potential as to why some of these schools are on this list. I don't know if I'm right, but it's the only explanation that I can come up with. Those are the old wards. I represent Ballyarnett, and as I say, most of that area is covered within it. Many of the people in Galia, for example, may not like to hear that you're saying that they're from Chantalafore. They're not, and that's a massive problem. And I know it sounds petty and parochial, but I genuinely think that that's where the mix-up in this may have come from. I could be wrong. Other than that, I don't see any other reason why some of the schools that you have on here are on here. But I would be very, very keen to see that. Also, just on that page is a bit of a pedantic point when I'm on it. Carn Hill is one word, and it's down here is two. I think whoever has come up with this map has looked at old data, and if they've looked at old data, they're not going to tackle the problem. And I think that that's an issue that you need to look at. I would support Councillor Boggs in saying around his issues with Strabane, it needs to be included. I have some questions there around the community voluntary sector. It's not to be disrespectful to the presentation. I hope you take it from in a constructive way. If we're going to do this and there's that amount of money there, it needs to be targeted at the right areas. And I'm certainly up to seeing that. Great. And the more the merrier. But there's no point doing it if we're not doing it for the right people. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Tierney. I'll let Ronan come in a second on sort of the community and voluntary sector and some of the points about the wider co-design. Look, again, I suppose going back to the schools point, again, the list of schools that have been identified there, it means that they are taking at least 10 pupils from the localities identified in terms of postcode at this stage. So they are, and it's starting off that conversation. Again, it is not a guarantee of funding. It's not a guarantee that they'll be within the final programme. And it's really trying to set out who are the young people in this area and who is working with them at a casting the net wide. And that's simply what we want to do, I suppose, with beyond the schools as well. What community and voluntary sectors are again working in these areas, what youth workers are in that area, what churches, sports clubs, whoever it might be that has a positive role on children and young people. So again, and we can go back and look to see, to make sure there's nothing which has been skewed unintentionally in any way. But again, what the intent at this stage is try to identify areas that we really want to work in, to work with the young people in the communities, and then who are the partners there at that stage. And the first step was trying to say, well, where are these young people going to school? And even in that list, there'll be some schools there which will have much a higher proportion of the young people attending those schools, which may end up being the key partners or might be right within the community. And this is the challenge, I suppose, of having a community, locality-based approach, but also trying to work with schools that might be outside the locality, might be and that is the challenge. And that's why we set out the intent now, and we work through that in the co-design and really use that local knowledge about how we do this. I'll let Ronan come in a second, because he'll be leading a lot of the work on the engagement. But as I say, from a departmental perspective, completely agree that this needs to be, as I say, go beyond schools. It needs to have community involvement in the sector there. It needs to have a wider range of organisations. And your point about the youth work is well made, and one that we've heard in other places, that we often hear that we go into schools and talk to school leaders and principals, and they say, we've got an issue around attendance or behaviour with this young person or this cohort. And then if you went to the same youth club or youth worker working with the same, there's no issue with attendance. That young person will come every week to the youth club. There's no issue about behaviour. And we see good practice of some schools that deploy youth work pedagogy in their schools, who have youth workers embedded in, and actually how that changes the community dynamic between how the school works with the community, how that young person then flourishes in education because they feel understood and accepted. So those are the kind of programs that we'd be really keen to investigate further in RAISE. But I'll let Ronan come in and explain just the work that's going to go on in terms of co-design to make sure we get that local knowledge.
Hi everybody. I've been seconded under the Department of Education. I am a youth worker in Derry. I worked up until taking the secondment in North West Youth Services, so I'm familiar with the range of work that the voluntary and community sector do in their communities, that they're not funded for, that they take no thanks or praise for, but they just go and do it anyway. And it's Councillor Taylor, is probably good for you, because I met with your strategic partners for Outer North yesterday, and they came to me and talked to me. And it's them that's leading it. They're the people that I'm going to get the information from. So I went to the meeting yesterday. I met with Darren Kirby and Paul. They give me a list of projects that are in your area and the things that have closed, moved on. People have just give up the ghost. But what's there now, what's running, what's operating, and what it does. And that's the best thing about it. So the role of the community in this is everything. It's looking at that Fair Start, key area 4, which is the whole community approach. And you'll be able to get that document online, and it'll give you a bigger picture of what it is. But it's also a place-based approach that we're using, which, again, we done a bit of training on that today, and it really puts forward how important the community voluntary sector is in this. So under this, we're going to be speaking to young people. We're going to be speaking to families. We are, as we said earlier, Strand Mullis and Parent Focus in this, and they're going to lead that because they're the experts in it. Regarding sort of the rollout and production and delivery you talked about, that's going to be community led as well. So I'm going around, not just your area, but every area. I met with the Waterside Partnership, I met with Outer North, and I met with Triax yesterday. And the whole point in that is that they can go away now and put together what their networks are, come back to me, we can get all the networks around the table, and then collectively they can decide, not me, who they want around the table to make the decisions, who inputs to this, who would be best placed to do it going forward. So regarding community, I'm at the consultation stage now, where I'm going around meeting everybody. I've been given a list of people to meet, but each meeting I'm adding it. So we are consulting with everybody. As I said, I met them yesterday. I'm meeting you today. No doubt if you're in that area, you'd like to be part of those meetings going forward, which there will be more. But as far as I'm concerned in my role, this is a whole community approach. So it's coming from the children and their parents and carers, their school, and then the wider sort of local voluntary and community sector.
Just to say thanks. I think that's perfect. It's great they start in Ballyarnett. That's where most things should start, in my view. But no, that's great. That's perfect. And I look forward to working with you as this rolls out. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Alderman McMorris online now.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And I'd just like to thank both Peter and Ronan for coming along, or sorry, Connor. Basically, I'm delighted to see that there is a particular emphasis on the Altnagavin ward. Although I do understand the concerns that people have raised and regarding capturing everybody equitably and not just regarding education under achievement, but all the other sectors. But I was just wondering, you know, it mentions a lot of schools there and basically that they have been consulted with. And I know you've been talking to the community and voluntary sector, but I was just wondering in regards to like the AOTIS sector, you know, the children that basically is disengaged basically from the education system. Now I know they would be attached to the schools where they originated from, but you know, you could have children from all different output areas within that one setting on the AOTIS. And how has there been engagement with those, and are they being considered? And just a wee bit more about that, I'd like to hear. I do think of the 7 key indicators that you talked about. You know, it covers a great vast amount of knowledge and expertise there, and I'm really excited to see how this goes into the locality planning. You know, so it's taking it out into the local areas and they're having input. You know, I always said it's very important that family and the community have a certain emphasis on how their children are being educated, and you know, the outside factors are coming into play, because it's not just always based on free school meals and social deprivations. There's other factors, you know, like basically social worker involvement and looked after children and all, and how they will be considered within this plan. But I'm really excited to see how this is going to be played out, and it's great that we're getting this amount of money and looking at educational underachievement and some of them social factors as well. So yeah, I'm really excited, and thank you very much for coming along. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment and the question. I suppose specifically on the point that you raised about EOTA settings, yes, that is an important point, in that that we're conscious that because we pick this locality approach, and young people might move in and out, and also that schools might not all areas might be served by EOTA settings. We have had early conversations with the Education Authority and the head of service in EOTAS about whether or not that could be utilised potentially as a cross-cutting theme. So the vast majority of the funding will be for that community-informed approach, but there might be elements of funding that we could potentially look at releasing for these kind of issues that don't neatly fall in the locality. So in my mind, I'm thinking about, well, EOTA settings is certainly one. You also mentioned children looked after, which is again is another sort of key cohort of young people that have particular vulnerabilities as well. So could there be a different sort of approach to them? Also, special schools would be another aspect in that. So there's these kind of things that maybe don't fit within a neat locality, but where we could take a more strategic look about, let's do something in here in EOTAS, let's do something here in special, let's do something here with children looked after, and almost a more cross-cutting approach. So we are open to that, and we are, EOTAS is something which has specifically been talked about. And another issue that we've had a couple of conversations with representatives of CNG about Irish medium education as well, about maybe challenges they face in particular. So there are these certain issues that maybe go beyond localities that we maybe take more a strategic view. So we are interested at those types of EOTAS is one which has specifically been looked at. And again, we'd be interested, again, we're building up a bit of data about what young people it is who end up in EOTAS settings, why and how do they end up there? What are their pathways beyond EOTIS in terms of, do they return to their school, another school, or is it a positive pathway post 16? And then tracking back in terms of what interventions can we put in earlier to maybe ensure young people can engage in education fully as much as possible. So look, I think the point about EOTIS is an important one, and there's maybe other sectors there that maybe argue the same in terms of special schools, Irish medium, and maybe other cohorts. So yes, we're looking at that too.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Next, I have Councillor Donnelly.
Carmarket, and thank you for the presentation. It's just one of the things I was going to talk about has been sort of touched on by Alderman McMorris, but you're saying you're talking to everybody in all the community and all of that, and we're elected reps, but the reality is that a significant section of our community don't vote and don't have any confidence in elected reps or the political system, and I see the political system as the cause of a lot of the ills that, you know, children going to school hungry and that, and just inadequately funded services, including health and education and that. And when you're talking about the community and voluntary structures there, there's also a significant section of the community who don't buy into that because of the perception of gatekeeping and other issues. And there's also the young people who don't buy into that for whatever reasons, and some of them would be maybe described as hard to reach. I'm not sure if that's an accurate term, but that. Have you any strategy in order to talk to or consult or get the thoughts of people who aren't in that sort of mainstream, whether it's elected representatives in here or the community involved who work outside them type of structures? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll maybe let Ronan come in again in a second as well. But yeah, look, I think Councillor Donnelly, I think that phrase about hard to reach young people and those who are disengaged is a key target area for us in terms of this programme. We are interested in those young people who disengage from education early, who have poor outcomes in education and in the longer term as well. And how do we get in earlier to ensure that those barriers don't become more systemic and that they disengage completely. So, look, I think the point that previous councillor made about EOTIS is an important one in terms of who's these young people who maybe are likely to be on the fringes. We have tried to identify young people who are more likely to have poor educational outcomes compared to their peers in terms of children looked after, newcomer, asylum-seeking young people, Irish traveller, Roma, and others who maybe either have poor outcomes but also poor levels of attendance and poor levels maybe of engagement. And the programme needs to have that inclusion lens on it to make sure that we are both in terms of trying to engage with those young people in this process, and also that programmes are designed with them in mind. But again, I suppose a lot of this will come from the community engagement in terms of what the community organisations say. And look, if there's organisations out there, Councillor Donnelly, that you would like us to engage with, we're happy to take them in terms of some suggestions, or if there's youth groups out there that we should be speaking to, happy to do that as well. But again, it's trying to cast the net wide to let sure people have their voice. Also look at what the data says in terms of what the locality looks like. There'll be some localities maybe with high proportions of certain cohorts that we want to engage with, and then make sure the programme meets those needs. But again, it's ultimately for the community to come forward with what they think is the need and the interventions. I don't know, Ronan, do you want to say any more about trying to cast the net wide? Sorry.
That exact thing about the gatekeeping came up with that training this morning, because the organisations delivering it said that this will become an issue. It's happened before, particularly in communities where people don't trust, they don't vote, they recognise that there are certain gatekeepers in their community, and that's what it is, and the barriers can't be broken down. I can't speak that directly to all communities because I don't know who the gatekeepers are, but regarding hard to reach young people, it's the correct term. They are our marginalised young people, the ones that we are feeling across the board. And it's how we reach them, because the cycle is just going to keep going and going and going. But what I've seen work in the past, and it doesn't work everywhere, and it doesn't work with every young person, but it's finding someone possibly that can reach them and can we work with them, and can they be the go-between? It doesn't necessarily that we need those young people sitting at the table, but they might have a representative within their hierarchy as a group of hard to reach young people that they can feed things to and back and forth. If that helps break down barriers, that's great. If it takes a longer time, that's also great, because it's all about building that trust and the process that they do. It's also that this, as much like the things we do in the community that are volunteer led, young people vote with their feet. So if they see they might get some benefit out of this, hopefully they will come forward. But if we can see that they're not getting any benefit, then we're going to have to change tack to reach them. It's a hard question to ask, to answer. But I'm hoping that we can use our wide net within the community to speak to everyone, be that directly or indirectly, that we can feed into them. The gatekeeper issues, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to go about that, but because this is community owned, I would hope that everyone would buy into it, and in a democratic way, that we can bring the right people around the table. That if there are recognised gatekeepers, is that they have to realise that they are the barrier and step aside. I know that's going to be very difficult for people, but is it something that can be discussed?
Thank you. Councillor Boggs.
Very briefly, Chair, and thanks for letting me back. And I suppose just something that hasn't been touched on yet is in relation to, and this time I suppose we'll look at the councillor, even though we don't at this present stage within the scheme and within the direction that we're going. But obviously there are pupils within our councillor who maybe go to schools, live in one area that isn't covered by the scheme, go to a school that isn't another, and vice versa. Live in one area that is covered, go to school in an area that don't. Has any consideration been given to me as a pupil coming from Strabane to a school that is involved in this scheme, that then I am not able to access the community wraparound element of the scheme that we're talking about, because at 3:15 I head back on a bus to Strabane and vice versa, and whether or not, if under the scheme we're talking about schools and where schools are being the basis of where the support needs to go, how do we then combat the people that need the support based on the school they go to, which is an area of concern that I have. But if that's what we're saying, how do we then make sure that we're combating that whenever they leave to go back to where they live? Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that you make in terms of, locality and trying to marry that up with where pupils are actually going to school. So, and again, this can just only be an illustrative example, but I would foresee a circumstance, say a locality comes forward and says, well, there's a school here with a high proportion of young people with free school meal and high proportion of young people that are from our locality. It may say 50 or 60% from this locality attend this school. So they come forward as a key partner, and it's in terms of they're going to deliver a programme, be it youth work, pedagogy in school, or emotional health and wellbeing interventions. I wouldn't foresee that intervention then to be postcode based whenever it hits the school gate. They will have a focus on the locality in terms of they've been in it, but it's really, there needs to be a level of flexibility, in terms of they're running a programme for the school and a whole school approach, that it's these pupils here that will avail of it and others won't. So there needs to be that level of flexibility in design. The locality gives us an area of focus of where we want to be. It gives us the partners we want to be in. But whenever we get down to a school level, there does need to be a level of flexibility in terms of how that works, especially if the funding is flowing to the school. So that is something that we need to work through. But I wouldn't want to be in a position that, as you set out, that a school is getting funded to do something to tackle this advantage, and we remove their flexibility about tackling, identify who the young people who need it most basically is. So that's why we talk about an area of focus, but also there will be spheres of influence here as well, and it needs to go broader than that. And that's really something to work through in terms of the co-design period, in terms of what works. But yes, we need to keep the locality as a focus of where the investment should be, but also not have that level of flexibility as well in design, that we're not unintentionally ruling people out on postcodes and things like that. So there is that kind of flexibility in that as well. So look, I don't want this to be seen as we funded a school and they're going to deliver X, Y, and Z, but it's only for these classes and the other classes have to go there. That will be for the school to deliver a design, how the delivery is going to work at a school level basis too. So like, that's the flexibility in this.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. And I probably should have done this at the start, but it's just to declare an interest as part of the Coordinating Organisations Network as part of the RAISE programme. But to say a massive thanks to Peter and Ronan for coming along as well and giving us the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Tierney?
Thank you, Chair. And it's just a follow on from something that Councillor Boggs was touching on there, about where and how this follows the young person to where they live if they don't go to live in the area where they go to school in. And a lot of this seems to be focused around the schools to try and get at the young people and engage young people. And I wonder, has there been any consideration? No, it seems to be at the schools feeding down then and out onto the rest of the community. I wonder, has there been any consideration from putting the community at the top and then feeding down into the schools? Because that's probably where you're going to get, in my view, better engagement from young people, but you're also going to get young people in their comfort zone, in their area, with their peers, with the issues that you're trying to tackle in that particular area, as opposed to geographically based on what school you go to. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's maybe it's maybe flipping it round a wee bit.
No, and as you say, the intent behind this is a partnership approach between all the organisations we talk about, schools, community and voluntary sector, church, youth, wherever it might be. So it's not intended that schools are put above others. I recognise that they are a key partner in this and that they will need to be supported as an anchor tenant. And again, the interventions, as I say, that are funded will vary depending on the locality. So there might be some localities that we're working across Northern Ireland that the school, because of the community infrastructure, is the only key trusted partner potentially, or is the key delivery agent. In other areas, we know that there'll be a stronger community voluntary sector, stronger youth settings, and therefore it's, as Ronan said, it's working out who has the credibility, who has the reach and the scope to deliver, and working with them. And in some instances, that'll be the schools, some will be other organisations, and in many circumstances, I suspect it'll be a mixed approach, a mixed economy approach. And ideally, what we would like to see happening is those models of schools working directly with community and voluntary sector, working in partnership, because that's where I think you get the greatest return on investment. And that is what I think schools are saying to us in terms of, well, we need to focus on this and we need support. So how do we wrap around that support in the school environment or in the community environment with everyone working together? That is the intent behind it. And I apologise if that hasn't come across, but that certainly is the intent, and that's why we are keen to now start talking to a wider range. And whenever I said we talk to schools early, that was purely a timing issue about academic year closing, and the Minister made an announcement in June, and we thought we better tell schools about this before they go off for the summer holidays. And now we're in the process of a wider engagement piece, but there's no hierarchy of investment here, and it really has to be that community informed approach in this.
Thank you. Perfect. Councillor Tierney, we're not all well cheeky as teachers, you know. I'm only joking. Councillor.
I see the ones I have.
Very briefly, and thank you for your indulgence, because I know it's my third time back in, but I had kind of pointed it in my first line of question, but I know that I'd asked a lot of you, Peter, so I appreciate why you might have forgotten about it. But would it be possible for us, out of all the areas across the north that have been ranked under the matrix that you have used to arrive at the position of what is included and what isn't, is it possible for this committee to get a look at, because we have a council area where half is included basically and half isn't, is it possible to get a look at where all areas sit and why half of our council area hasn't been, or how close we are to inclusion, or just for looking at future proofing of it?
Yeah, we can take that away. I think we've shared some data out there with other councils and other elected representatives as well have asked similar questions. I think there's been assembly questions and things like that. So we'll look at what we can share, and we have no issue with that, you know. And again, if there's any further questions, happy to come back and answer them. Yeah.
Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. And look here, first off, thanks both of you for coming in. And there's so much in this and so much level of detail, and I appreciate and understand that this is the beginning of what is going to be a pretty long process, I'm guessing. It won't be done overnight. So appreciative of that. Now, I'm kind of focusing down into your map, and I don't want to be harsh in relation to this, but I'm looking at some of your pink areas on the map here of the city. Some of them I know very well. Some of them I don't know just as well as others. But I am a wee bit alarmed to see that there's not one area in what would have been what we consider to be the Forest side, DEA, that has been focused down into. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, that tells me that, you know, there might be something getting missed here. I don't want to start picking out areas on the Forest side DEA, but I think if any of us wanted to look at that map, we'd probably be able to identify areas that we think would be very deserving of this kind of investment and treatment as well, you know. So I'm struggling to find how it is that we're picking whole swathes of parts of the city, but we're not actually putting a microscope on parts of the city that perhaps need more focus. And one further thing, and I was looking at your list of schools, and I was somewhat surprised to see that the Fountain Primary School was not included on that list, and I can't understand why not. So it might be an oversight. If it is, that's fine. But you know, so there are elements of this that I think probably need a little bit more focus. As I said, I'm not getting into the business of pointing fingers at parts of the city where people might just get that little bit offended. But really, I think maybe just a little bit of going back to the drawing board in terms of the areas that you're focusing on. Now, perhaps I've picked this up wrong and they're not the final areas anyway. Maybe you could clear that up for me, either one of you. Thanks, Peter.
No, thank you. No, well, as I say, those are the areas that have been identified at this stage through the process that we went through in terms of identifying SOAs and then ranking them. I can't comment on specific SOAs, and it might be that they've fallen out because of high levels of GCSE attainment or other things that have meant that others have jumped to the top, but there might be other factors at play. But as I say at the start, the process now is going out to these communities, and if there's issues like this that you highlight in terms of why haven't you gone there, or there's an area there of deprivation that needs to be involved in the conversations, that's the process now to be involved. And similarly in terms of the schools, you know, so if you say actually there's a school here not on the list, and I assume now that it's not on the list because they don't have more than 10 pupils within those areas. But again, if that's an oversight, that's the process of the community engagement to say, actually, well, we think in this area the key partners are these schools, these youth groups and organisations, these community development sector. That is now the mapping work that has to be done. So when we can start to identify who are the key delivery partners, who are the key area influencers in an area, and who are the ones that we need to work with. This is the challenge in this type of approach, but ultimately we do it because we think the impact in the longer term is the best, because we're going in specifically where the young people are. But this is a learning curve, I suppose, as well. There are good models of this in other places in terms of collaborative impact. And we are keen to see how this might work in Derry and this area. So look, as I say, the key point I would say about a level of flexibility and approach, if there's using the co-design process to identify the key partners, but then ultimately it is a limited funding pot, and we need to make sure that we utilise that in the best effect and not stretch it too far. But we are keen to look to see where we can leverage in other funding as well. So if there's opportunities there, we're happy to think about it too. Sorry.
Thanks. Appreciate what you're saying. I absolutely do. And you might be right there. There might be less than 10 pupils from these areas in particular schools. But if you start ruling out those schools, there will never be more than 10 pupils from those areas in those schools, because we're not encouraging that level of community education and, you know, cross community education, which is something that's very close to me, I must admit. So I think maybe you might want to go back to the drawing board on that one as well. But, you know, I appreciate, you know what, it would also be churlish not to recognise the shared island, you know, to have come forward with this level of funding. That has to be appreciated, you know, and I don't think any of us mentioned that, but it's key to doing it, because if that investment wasn't here, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So it's important to mention that. Just one last question, you know, obviously this is a big project. I'm working from your department's perspective. What kind of human resource have you got to make this happen? Because again, that's something that's going to be key. If you've only got the two of you, I think it might take a fair few years, you know, so I'd be interested to know that.
But yeah, no, we can work very hard now, honestly. No, I should say, so there's a team which has been working in the department on this, the design of it for the last number of months, but it is a small team. But we're thankful that we've been able to bring in, so Ronan is one of 8 community engagement officers that were brought into the department through interchange, and they've got, I think the positive behind that is they're not civil servants like me. They come in with more better experience and more credibility than they have in terms of actually working with communities and working with localities. So we've got a range of individuals who come in from either youth work background, from councils themselves in terms of engagement, through other bodies and education bodies. So I think that's a real positive. So we've got 8 individuals, and the intent behind Ronan and his colleagues is that they can work directly with communities, work with those partners, and have that level of credibility, as I say. They're being supported by a lead who has come in from Barnardo's, who has significant experience of delivering a similar approach in North Belfast in terms of collaborative impact, in terms of Monkstown boxing and the Thrive area. So we've built up a good team in a short period of time. And we're continue to try and build a team, but we're also conscious that some of that funding comes from the 24 million, and we need to try and drive costs, those program costs, down as low as possible. So most of the money goes to the front line, really, as well. So there's always that balance.
Thank you so much, Peter and Ronan. So that's our questions. And thank you so much for coming on. It was really informative. And I'm sure everyone will be in touch with their questions now that you've put your email address on the PowerPoint. But thank you so much. You're welcome to stay, but you probably don't want to. So thank you. That's great. All right, I'm going to go back because I forgot to ask for declarations of interest. We can do it as we go, or if there's any now. No, we're okay, sorry. Right, chairperson's business then. So I have a few bits here. The first one is, I have 2 for myself. I'll start off with that. So it's just to ask if we can invite Caleb's cause in to do a deputation. And I know we're coming to the list of deputations further on in the agenda, and there's a few of them, so just to ask if we can add that on. Do you want to speak, Councillor Farrell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And on behalf of the SDLP, I'd just like to say we'd love it if representatives from Caleb's cause could come to this committee. I think everybody will remember at full council last month that we unanimously supported the aims and objectives of that organisation. We all agree that young people with special educational needs need legal protection and support after the age of 19. At the minute, they're being abandoned by the government, abandoned by the system, and we think that needs to change. So we would love to hear directly from Alma and whoever else is involved in the campaign. They're energetic, they're enthusiastic, and you know, the effort they put into this campaign is to be admired. Just on that, Chair, I know that Caleb's cause are attending an event in Stormont on the 18th of November, and they've asked that council buildings be lit up in a shade of blue. I'm not sure the exact shade it is, but could we make arrangements for that around that date? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Farrell. 100%. They're an amazing group of women. They're so inspirational. And we had that conversation about the council buildings too. So thank you so much for bringing that up again. That's great. The second piece of chairperson's business is just to say that today's World Mental Health Day, and I thought as a committee it would be silly of us to not speak about that. So it was just to encourage everyone to reach out and show others they're not alone, and if they're struggling, to please reach out and ask for support, and to thank all our local organisations who do amazing work in helping people through really tough times. So, right, next then we have Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to raise the issue about the graffiti that has presented itself on the walls of Craig Neighbourhood Partnership. My colleague Emma McGinley was contacted by the tenants that are up there and CMP at the minute. And I know, Barry, there was a paper yesterday in ENR around the tendering process for a few buildings to be painted. But Emma and myself just wanted to bring it to the committee today about the building up there being repainted as soon as possible, just because of where it's situated, just because of what the graffiti is saying. And it's impossible for the organisation to be able to do that themselves. Obviously, they're a charitable organisation, non-profit, and they don't have that type of money built into their budgets to be able to go out and paint over some of the graffiti that appears there. So we just wanted to bring it to light here today to see if there would be any possibility that that building and the Bishop's Field could be sorted as soon as possible due to the content that's on the walls there at the minute. Thank you very much.
For yourself, Chair, we're aware that we have passed on to our property team and they have it on their list in order to address that.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Next, I have Councillor Harkin, and I realised I hadn't replied to you, but I don't have you on my list. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I just wanted to thank you for raising that it was World Mental Health Day, and it's also World Sight Day. And I think that the RNIB have been working with people to kind of wear the glasses, some specs, which make it very, very difficult to do. And I think that's an important way of raising awareness. And as somebody pointed out to me today, it's not just about pointing out the challenges, it's also about showing the difficulties that people have because of the way society's organised, and that's what we need to change. So, but what I wanted to raise, Chair, is, I mean, this is the Health and Community Committee, so I think that this is very appropriate. We had, it was announced through the press that Gordon Lyons has met with the Loyalist Communities Council, the LCC, and I think that this has taken a lot of people aback, that the Minister, who has now, I've talked to a number of organisations, and I think that we as a council have asked for numerous meetings on numerous issues with the Minister, and they've all been turned down. So there's been anti-poverty organisations that fed into the anti-poverty strategy, asked for a meeting with the Minister for an update. The Women's Policy Group asked for a meeting for an update. I know that the Rainbow Project asked for a meeting here, NI. The list goes on of organisations that have asked the Minister for meetings to talk about social inclusion policies, to ask for updates on the implementation of an anti-poverty strategy. These have all been turned down, refused and ignored. And I think it's shocking that he would choose to meet with the LCC, who, in my opinion, are all unrepresentative and have no particular expertise in the issues that he has claimed that he was meeting them for. So I think that this is, we have to have something to say about this decision. I think it is unacceptable. I think it's a waste of his time, but the frustrating thing is that there's all these organisations who are desperate for meetings, who have actually done a tremendous amount of work to address deprivation, to address infrastructure, to address social inclusion, and he is just ignoring them. So I think from the council, we want to send a very clear message that it's unacceptable, that he should meet with us to talk about the anti-poverty strategy, when that's going to be implemented. He should meet with us to talk about the rate support grant, which we've also asked him for a meeting on, and he's ignored us in that. So I just think that this is, what message is he trying to convey about hundreds of organisations across the north, and to this council and perhaps other councils that have also been banging on his door? He's no time to meet for any of us, but he's decided to meet with the LCC. So I think it's shocking, and I have a short proposal that I want to send Paula right now, if we could consider.
Councillor Harkin, you still have time for full council for your proposal? No? Okay. Right, sorry. We usually do with health and communities. My apologies.
Can I just say, sorry to come on, you just talked about World Vision Day, and I am actually visually impaired, legally registered blind. And if we don't get these motions in advance, I can't read them.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. That's a very, very good point.
See, on that, I'm actually glad that Sandra brought that up. Where Alderman Montgomery sitting is where I normally sit for full council. That screen there, no matter what your vision's like, that screen, you cannot make it out and it needs looked at. And if we can get that looked at for what urgently, it's definitely holds people back. It's not working in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes because it is quite long, and obviously there's people that can't access it as easily. All right, so we have a motion there. Are we okay with the motion? Councillor Duffy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I suppose I'll thank Councillor Harkin for bringing the proposal. Look, as a party, we were equally shocked and surprised that the minister had found time to meet with the Loyalist Council in terms of what they are representative of is Loyalist gangs who are involved in racketeering, drug dealing, criminality, intimidation, putting people out of their homes within the areas they purport to represent. So it is surprising that the minister found time to meet with them while there is an ever-growing list of organisations who are legitimate lobby groups, interest groups, who he has not found time for, but actually actively refused to meet. I know that today in the Assembly, in the Communities Committee, the chair of the committee, Colin Gildernew, MLA, has asked to actually see the minutes of any meetings that has taken place with the LCC to see what exactly is being discussed. Absolutely, there's representation that needs to take place around issues around poverty, around deprivation. We have heard a presentation here today from a group that is doing that legitimately. But I just think at this point we do need to call out the minister for, we need the anti-poverty strategy published, we need the support grant, we need all those things addressed, and at this point the minister is very selective in what he is doing. So absolutely support the proposal that we write to him in relation to this.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Harkin for this proposal. We've no issue in supporting it either. We share other concerns around the minister's meeting with the LCC, because the Minister for Communities isn't the only minister that met the LCC recently. I do think that this is a bigger problem than ministers meeting with the LCC, because if anybody listened to the leader of the DUP's response today when he was asked, he was almost justifying it, and that is equally worrying in my view. The Minister for Communities has ignored call after call after call from this council around numerous things, and is just blatantly ignoring us. I think it's right and proper that we write them and ask the questions that we need to ask, particularly around all of the poverty things that are included within the motion. The rich support grant is a huge issue which we will be grappling with within the next couple of months. We need to have answers, and whilst the minister is running around meeting gangsters, we have got serious questions that we need to ask him, and I think it's about time that he spoke to people who actually represent people. And I think that's key in all of this. Come and speak to those who are elected to represent people, not people who are intimidating people for representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Alderman McMorris online.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I can't comment about who the minister sees or doesn't see. I'm not aware of the meeting content, but I'd just like to say that we engage with people from all across Northern Ireland, including those within the loyalism circles, and we will continue to emphasise the importance democratic politics has and the absolute opposition to all forms of violence. So as I say, I'll be going against this here. I don't know why he met them. I'm not across the detail of that, but I'm aware that a lot of people meet with a lot of fractions within our society. I recently have been engaging with a lot of people in order to remove flags from the waterside, and I make no apology of that, because as one of the colleagues in the chamber said, what about leadership? Do you know what I mean? And I think it just shows good leadership in order to be engaging with these people and to putting our message across, you know what I mean, about we do oppose all forms of violence or any antisocial activities that they're involved in. So thank you.
Councillor Boggs.
Just very briefly, Chair, it's just that I don't think anybody else that is in support of the proposal is disputing whether or not the minister met them. We're all in agreement that he met them. It's why he felt the need to meet them. He has come out very openly, as Councillor Cheney says his party leader has defended the decision to meet the LCC, so I don't think that's in dispute. What Alderman McMorris is suggesting, the issue is meeting them, not what they met about. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Donnelly?
Good Chair. And it's sort of unusual situation here. Chair, look, I think people should meet people, and when there's meaningful engagement involved, I'm just not sure, and it's very mildly, how meaningful this engagement around that issue was. But we can come up for rationales why, meetings should or shouldn't take place. But I think the main point here is that here's a list of groups who haven't been met, very legitimate and positive groups. And there's people in our community that'll say, but the problem with these groups is they don't have any guns. And that is an unfortunate situation. Not that they don't have any guns, but there will be people saying it's the fact that they don't have guns is why nobody's listening or giving them serious attention. Thank you.
So a show of hands, who is for the motion? Oh, sorry, I need a seconder first, sorry. Councillor Duffy seconded there. Sorry, show of hands now for 4.
Chair, what about the people online?
We're going to do that after. 4. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Alderman McMorris
I'm against.
and Councillor McDade. Against.
Okay, 11 for, 1 against. All right, thank you.
Sorry, I'm for. You find the mic button there.
Sorry, is that Alderman McMorris or
Catherine McDade.
Councillor McDade?
Aye, thanks.
No problem, that'll be recorded. So 12 for, 1 against. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. And last piece of chairperson's business is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. And I raised this yesterday when the Pinton lot came up about community centres. I've been contacted by a number of people who use the Bishop's Field Sports Centre, and I've been in it myself recently. It needs work. There's no doubt about it. I've no idea if officers have planned work. I would like to know. But given the numbers of people who come through that centre, it is well, in my view, below par. And it needs, at the very least, like a paint. And around the toilets and the changing rooms, I'm not exaggerating when I say the dirt is up the walls. I wonder, Chair, through you, could we ask if officers got any plans to address this and how quickly this can be addressed, because it's a big issue. Thank you.
Through yourself, Chair, the contractor has been appointed and work starts within 2 weeks, plasterboard and painting and other things. And that was in motion a number of months ago. The budget was secured. And also back to Councillor Hutton, that building was painted yesterday as well. So thanks, Chair.
That's some delivery, please.
I know, you took the words out of my mouth. That is amazing. All right, well, is that it, all chairperson's business? Oh, sorry, Councillor Donnelly, sorry, I didn't see it.
No, I just want to say that it's welcome, the fact that it's being painted, because it's an area where I would walk a dog and that. And during the Foyle Cup recently, it was very noticeable. Whilst you had all these visitors, and look, I'm not somebody that would notice decor. I could go home and the whole place could be a different colour. I wouldn't notice, but the back of that building above the pitches is very bad disrepair. But it's good, and like to thank the people behind it, that sort of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. All right, item number 7 then, we're on matters arising of the open minutes of the Special Health and Communities Committee held on Thursday, the 12th of September at 2 o'clock. Do we have a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Tierney. Great. Item number 8, matters arising from the open minutes of the Health and Community Committee held on Thursday, 12th of September at 4 o'clock. Do we have a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Hutton. Great. All right. Item number 9 is consensual grant making action plan for the Moore DEA, an action plan for community support fund underspend in the Sperrin DEA, and Barry is going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is the latest in line of these reports for our 8 local growth partnerships, and the purpose of the report is to seek your approval for the action plan for Moore. First, the approval of 15,000 funding to the lead partner Triax, and the Sperrin Community Support Programme action plan for 24-25, and we're seeking your approval for 3,869 to the lead partner EasyLink Community Transport, and that's to address underspend from the recent open call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Hutton.
Just to declare an interest as an employee of Bogside Brandywell Health Forum.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Do we have a proposer and seconder? Proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Boyle. Great. Item number 10 is progress on UNICEF Child Friendly Cities and Communities Programme, and that's Barry again.
Thank you, Chair. And again, members will see it's quite a wordy report, but I'm not going to go into all the detail. But in terms of the report, we're seeking to update you on the progress of the UNICEF UK Child Friendly Cities and Communities Programme, and we're looking your approval for the following. Firstly, a revised child rights and participation terms of reference. You'll see that in your Appendix A, and a revised child rights governance structures in Appendix C. Seeking your approval for a revised child rights multi-agency action plan, Appendix E, and the October 24 UNICEF UK reporting log frame, Appendix F. We're also requesting your approval to reprofile the budget of £68,163 to support and sustain mandatory elements of the UNICEF programme for youth voice participation, and that'll take us up to the 31st of March 2027. Again, you'll see details around that budget in Appendix G. And we're seeking your approval of funding of £15,000 to the Education Authority, £5,000 per financial year from this financial year, next year, and up to 26-27, and that'll come from within the 68,163 budget, and that's to support the joint resourcing, the North West Ministry of Youth, the Youth Voice for the Council area, and again, you'll see information in your appendices around that. And finally, members, we're looking your approval for the tender for delivery agent to undertake the child rights participation mapping aligned to the 8 local growth partnership boards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. Proposed by Councillor Hutton, seconded by Councillor Tierney. Great. Item number 11 is the consultation response to the Housing Executive Building Safer Communities Together Community Safety Strategy 25-30, and that's Barry again.
Thanks, Chair. Members, this is to seek your approval of the response submitted on behalf of Council to the Housing Executive Building Safer Communities Together strategy. And members, you'll see in section 3, the main considerations within the consultation were to examine the suggested approach for tackling antisocial behaviour through engaging with residents, fostering collaborative partnerships and utilising evidence-based interventions while fostering a culture of mutual respect, responsibility and pride within its social housing communities. You'll see in section 3.3, the consultation sought views on the 3 strategic priorities: building community confidence, ensuring local solutions and working together. So members, the purpose or the recommendation is that you endorse the consultation response, which has been submitted to the Housing Executive on the 30th of September 24. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair. It's just to thank all of us as elected reps will deal with anti-social issues across around the visit of the EA. So I welcome the strategy, so I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Proposed by Councillor Heaney, seconded by Councillor Tierney. That's great. Item number 12 is the Sports Committee Club Maintenance Programme.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this is to inform you of the decisions of the Sports Committee Club Maintenance Selection Panel and to seek endorsement of the decisions made by the assessment team. Members, before we go to the recommendation, I'm just going to refer you to the finance around it. So the total budget allocated to the club maintenance grant aid this year is 45,000. The last number of years it's been 60,000, and we found that from one-off budget held in reserves. And as members will be aware, there's no recurrent budget allocated to the Sports Committee Club Maintenance Grant Aid Programme. To continue the club maintenance programme beyond this financial year will require an additional rates ask. a sum of 45,919 pence has been allocated to the sports clubs. So we have found the extra £919 and 10 pence from within existing sports development budgets so that we could fund all applicants. So recommendations are to note the content of the report and you endorse the decisions of the assessment team and the sports committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Duffy, proposed.
Yeah, just happy to propose it. Just looking at the list, there's a really broad section of clubs represented, and I know from some of my work with individual clubs, the importance of this even small amounts of money in terms of the club maintenance. So just welcome it, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Tierney.
Yep, happy to second it. And whilst Councillor Duffy is saying about the different clubs that are there, I think when you look at the different areas that they come from as well, it's right across this district that we're trying to reach out to. I think it's important that the officers did find that extra money. I think it's very, very good that no one is missing out. This money is incredibly important. And whilst, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's mainly £1,500. It's £1,500 that keeps bubbling and keeps clubs pushing on. So I think it's great. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Boggs.
Just a quick declaration of interest as a member of one of the groups.
Thank you, Councillor Boggs. So proposed by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Tierney. Item number 13 is the consultation response to the EQIA on the Executive Office budget, and that's Barry again.
Thanks, Chair. Members, this is to seek your approval for the proposed consultation response to TAO. You'll see in the report there, they issued this consultation document in August and requested it be returned by the 13th of September. I'm not going to go over again a whole pile of detail, but members will be aware of the number of reports came here in the last number of years, and our good relations programme was slashed by 47%. While we did receive some additional monies this year, you'll see the basis of our response in Appendix A is outlining our concerns and the Council's concerns regarding the budget allocation and the impacts on service delivery, along with the impacts on our Section 75 groups, the rural area, and children and young people in particular. So that has formed the main basis of the response, member. So the recommendation is that you approve the draft consultation response to the Executive Office budget for 24-25. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. The proposer, proposed by Councillor Boyle, seconded by Alderman Montgomery. My apologies before I move on. Alderman McMorris, I've just seen your messages. Would you like to come on now?
I was just basically to welcome the last item. And basically, can I just ask as well, in regards to the £919.10, I'm assuming that was because everything that was requested from the sports clubs was granted. I'm assuming that's the reason, and if so, I'm glad that you found the money because this is a lifeline to these clubs. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
To yourself, Chair, in response to the last question from Alderman McMorris, yeah, the successful applicants was just slightly over the budget. So rather than cut one of the applicants, we found the money within the existing sports development budgets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. So item number 14 is the Life Tree project, and Seamus is going to take us through this.
Chair, I want to take the report on the Life Tree project and the associated position paper as read and seek members' approval to continue supporting the project beyond March 2025 with financial assistance.
Seconded.
Proposed Councillor Tierney, seconded Councillor Duffy. Item number 15 is Food Service Delivery Plan 24-25, and that's Seamus again.
Chair, the purpose is to seek members' approval to adopt the food service plan for 24-25. Members, you'll note from the report that outlines the framework established by the Food Standards Agency for Local Authority Food Law Enforcement. The plan helps ensure the priorities and standards are adhered to locally and is reviewed annually to help inform members on the scope of the service carried out by the Environmental Health Team. The report also outlines the budget, which incorporates grant funding from the Food Standards Agency, and is recommend members approve the plan.
Thank you, Seamus. Proposed Councillor Boyle, seconded Councillor Clark. That's great. Item number 16 is deputations update, and that is Karen.
Members, I think the report is self-explanatory, so you will see that we have a number of outstanding deputations, so thank you.
Perfect. Proposed by Councillor Tierney. Councillor Boggs?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Karen. Can I just ask in relation to what deputations go where? Is that agreed? The way I had read it was I thought that we were maybe going to look for suggestions to fill the December slot. Is that not the case, or how are we working out who's coming first?
Chair, we're looking at the deputations in order of those received at this point in time. I'm happy, obviously, to take recommendations from yourselves as committee members, but Angel was agreed in July at full council. Extern was agreed following a meeting with the Chief Executive around the Crisis Intervention Service. Science Swifts were agreed in September at full council. And Mindwise, there is an issue with an ongoing questionnaire survey and change of personnel, which probably has delayed that report. So we would be looking at those initial three, and obviously the Chair's suggestion of the Caleb's cause. So we will look at how we can programme those, given the likely pressures on committee and committee support services as well. Thank you.
I'm loath to be too parochial here and not to skip the queue. There is just, when it's being considered, there is a time constraint in relation to the proposal that I made around Science Swifts and Strabane Athletic, and if the committee aren't adverse to them maybe looking at the December slot, it's not to say that they're more important than any of the rest of the groups. It's just around the time sensitivity of the ask that they have of this council.
Sir Tierney?
Thank you. And normally I would have no issue with that. However, there also is a time critical issue for Exeter, who through the Community Crisis Intervention Service, I think everybody knows the work that they do. They're under severe pressure. I was going to suggest the sooner that we get them on, the better, in my view. And if needs be, I'm more than happy to see a special health and communities where we take the both of them, perhaps sooner rather than later, but maybe before December. Thank you.
All right. So are we happy enough that we prioritise Science Swifts and Extern? Is everyone happy enough with that?
Extern and Science Swifts.
Okay, and we'll try and even get them on the one meeting, hopefully, so keep everybody happy. All right, we're okay with that then, yeah? Perfect, okie doke. So we're on to open for information now. I'll just run through, and if we have any issues, just pop your hand up. So item number 17? No, 18? Alderman McMorris?
Sorry, I just put that on to say I was saying yes to the proposals about the deputation, sorry.
No problem, Alderman McMorris, thank you. Sorry, 18? No? 19? Councillor Farrell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Item 19 is about suicide and self-harm prevention. And I think everybody's well aware of the scourge of suicide across our city and district. And some of those really unfortunate incidents are due to addiction. And I would note that addiction across this city and district is a massive, massive issue. And the lack of inpatient detoxification services across this city and district is contributing to that issue. And I would like to just praise Tamsin White, who had launched the Detox for Dairy campaign. And we don't have a detox centre, and I am aware that there is an independent review into addiction services across the north on a regional basis, and the review is not complete. We understand there's a report has been finished, it hasn't been finalised, it hasn't been published, it hasn't been sent out for consultation. We think it would be a good idea to write to the Minister for Health to get an update on that, because enhanced addiction services across the city and district are needed and needed urgently, and they won't start to be delivered until we see the outcome of this review. So I've sent a very short and self-explanatory proposal to Paula, and I would ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Tierney. So we have a seconder, Councillor Hutton.
Yeah, it's just to show our support as well for the proposal and writing to the Minister of Health. But it's to acknowledge as well, and I'm sure everybody will agree, the services that are ongoing in the city at the minute, the likes of Arc Fitness, you have the Northland Centre, a lot of the community organisations are getting funded through Executive Office funding, Communities in Transition. But definitely it's worth writing, but it's to acknowledge that there is ongoing work here and that there is help out there for anybody that needs it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Is everyone in agreement? Yeah, perfect. Okay, we'll get that sent then. Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Thank you, Alderman McMorris. I've just seen your message. All right, moving on to item number 20. Councillor Boggs?
Yep, just very briefly. Following one of the a motion that came to council, I think it was either a motion or proposal, but on the back of that, I had asked that member services would look into some form of animal welfare training in relation to the legislation and regulation currently in place here across the north, because we do pick up concerns from constituents about animal welfare cases. And while Seamus and his team, and obviously the team then wider than that and from Ananoma, along with our own dog warden team, do their best to help. I think from an elected rep's perspective, the point that I made at that time would be that it would be beneficial to get some training. So I was just wondering if officers could follow up with member services to see if there's been any movement on that, because I think it would be beneficial for everybody. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Boggs, I have been liaising with the Animal Welfare Service in from Ananoma, and they have agreed to provide training. So we just need to get a slot in place, and hopefully that'll take place very shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Boggs. Thank you, Seamus. Great. Item number 21. 22. 23. Okay, can I get a proposer and a seconder? Going to confidential. Proposed Councillor Boggs, seconded Councillor Boyle. That's great.
Chair, I might be doing something wrong here.